keep
We're
talking
talking.
for a
We're
bit.
talking about relevant art things.
Okay, it should be up now. But
You're right.
it's not that bad. Especially, I've been working in gouache, and I recommend that just because it's a little bit. I haven't used like acrylic or anything, so I can't really compare it. But it seems like it is like a little bit more fussy in some ways. Like you have to really understand what it's doing.
the gouache.
Yeah, just because
Yeah.
like you can't easily just layer up stuff as much as you want. But it's
But it's
like
like
once you kind of understand like how it works with itself as you like layer it up, it's not so bad. It just requires a little bit of planning. But even then, like just with like a, I don't know. Again, I barely know what I'm doing at all, but it's not that bad. And I think it is actually a really helpful exercise for just like visual training. It's kind of like doing figure drawing
Yeah.
classes or something.
Well, it makes me
Where
want to like. We should do like a still life painting session.
yeah, that'd be
I
fun.
I mean, I should just join you.
Cause that's like what I do. Usually, I try and do it on Thursdays because that's usually my day off. And I mean, these ones don't take that long. But because that's such a small thing, it's like a 3x4 image. But I want to do a bigger one, but right now I'm still I'm still kind of getting used to just the medium
Yeah.
itself. And since I'm trying to do like lino cut and other things going on, I don't have time to just like paint every single day. Though once the farmers market is over, I'll probably do more because I'm less worried about scrambling things every once in a while.
Yeah.
But also, there's a lot of like bigger printing projects I want to do too.
Yeah.
That will take up a bunch of time. So
Well, and like you said, the little ones is just like a nice visual training.
mm-hmm. And
Train your hand, train your eye.
yeah, well, it's like the first time I did a still life. I tried doing a still life from painting. Because before I'd primarily just done like some photograph stuff where I'd just look at that and I'd do like in my sketchbook. So I could take however much time I wanted and I could just design it a lot more. Whereas just having it in person, trying to just be like, okay, I have to work from what's here is kind of a different thought process. And I mean, like the flowers I did, those are all photo reference, essentially.
They look really nice as a little set.
Mm-hmm. And then those like don't even have a background. I just did like a solid color.
But it looks really nice.
Those ones I did like a pencil layout, and with these pears I'm just do like a really thinned out layer of paint in roughly the color that I'm going to use. So I just sketch it with the paint really quick and then use that as a reference for laying it out. So there's no like pencil marks in there that kind of, because with gouache pencil marks will usually show through unless you're putting down like a really thick layer on top. And I'm trying to, because one of the things that's cool with it is it's basically watercolor.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can really thin it down with water and do washes. And you can build it up. And I've been trying to practice working with thickening the layers as I go, which was like kind of tricky. I'm still kind of figuring it out, but it does give you control because the thicker layers will become more and more opaque. But anyway, that's one of the things I was doing this week, painting a pear. I'm actually really happy with how the pear itself turned out.
Yeah.
I think I could probably darken it up or something. Because, like, looking at it from, like, across the room, kind of squinting my eyes, I think it could have a little bit more contrast, but I don't know. That's what I was saying. I might just be done. I don't know if I feel like finagling the cloth anymore.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's just going to get muddier and muddier. Because that's kind of what happened. I'd done a bunch of it yesterday, and today after work I was like, oh, I'm going to keep working on that. And it was just one of those things where I felt like everything I was doing was kind of making it worse. So, whatever. That's how you learn. Ooh, what video game are you playing? Donkey Konga?
Duke Nukem?
Playing some Duke Nukem 64.
Yeah, Duke Nukem 64. Let us heal you with our words.
Our words about...
With our smooth voices.
Words about making movies.
Yeah.
At least half of it's pretty much all about movies.
Yeah.
Chapter... Hold on. Why do I feel like I... Okay, yeah. Chapter 2's kind of just about art, and then Chapter 3's mostly movie stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, Skate 3.
Skate
Nice.
3. I don't actually know what that is, but... Hey! The bookmark. I didn't have this book for all week because I left my backpack at my family's house, so I was just looking on my phone.
Yeah.
The bookmark that I got from Philip, that I bought from Philip. Now I gotta remind myself.
To mail it to somebody.
Yeah. Next time I have somebody cross country. I have to, like... Oh, I wanted to take really, like, rigorous notes and go through this a few times, but I totally didn't, because one never does.
I took, like, a few notes, and then I actually ended up just taking a bunch of pictures on my phone.
Yeah.
Which are all oriented crazy. All
right.
Trying to think. I mean, I guess we could introduce the book.
Yeah, do you want to do tea this late?
Probably not.
Okay, that is fine.
We'll try and keep this one a little bit more brief. Because while I don't technically have to be up super early, I do kind of like getting up a bit early to prep some things
and
for the farmer's market.
Also, I've been staying up late working, and it starts to catch up with me.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the choice of sleeping in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can introduce it or...
I guess... I mean, you know more about it than I do, but...
All right.
So, you can go for it.
All right, we read some chapters from Sculpting in Time by Andrey Tarkovsky. Andrey Tarkovsky is a famous Russian filmmaker, a Soviet filmmaker, who was making stuff in like the 50s through 80s.
It's mirrored.
He makes some pretty different movies. And he only ever got to make he's kind of one of those artsy, like, this might be one of the greatest directors of all time, but then sometimes watching his movies is kind of tough. I don't know. Going back to them, I really have started to really like them, but
after reading this, I really want to watch the stuff that he like directly talks about in here.
Yeah.
The stuff because I started, we just read like 2 chapters, but I read like the introduction and chapter 1 as well. And so I was also like, I want to actually watch Mirror and was it
Ivan's Childhood?
Ivan's Childhood, and they mentioned Solaris at the end. I haven't seen Solaris.
You haven't seen Solaris?
Andrey Rublev.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really want to. So that's probably my least favorite one, but I really want to go back because I feel like he's probably got a lot of things to say now in Andrey Rublev. Now that I've like read this.
Well, it's interesting. So, yeah, he says some interesting things about that one because when he's talking about how it's a period piece, he's like, obviously, we have no idea what it was actually like to live there in that time. And obviously, if somebody from like 600 years ago were to watch Andrey Rublev, they'd be like, what is this? Like, it would be unrecognizable to them.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, that's not the point, right? Because you can't, but the idea is that you're trying to convey... You're basically trying to create, like, a new experience and convey something specific.
Yeah,
by the way that you, like... Again, he said the way he refers to it as sculpting in time, where you're like a sculptor chips away the marble to removing the unnecessary parts until you get like the desired form. In the same sense with a film, you're chipping away the unnecessary pieces of time until you're left with the desired kind of time sculpture. Which is a really interesting way of putting it.
Yeah, it took me a long time to wrap my head around it. It helps to watch his movies after you kind of know what he's talking about.
I know, so I really want to watch him after kind of hearing his philosophy on it. Because it's a really fascinating like perspective on like filmmaking. Where he's like, yeah, the medium of film is just time. It's not like the film itself or the acting or the music. And it's not even like an amalgam of those things. It's just time and crafting like that time into something else. And he talks about it as like when somebody watches a movie, it grants that person like more time in their life. Which is kind of crazy. Like the idea of that. But it's like you're giving somebody an experience of time that they otherwise would have not experienced. And it's like trimmed down into like the essence of that experience. It's like you don't need to show every little bit of detail of every single thing. You show what's necessary so something that would have been like taken place over the course of 50 days, you can present the necessary parts in like an hour. So you basically get like the 50 days worth of time of that character or whatever in the time of the film.
Yeah, it's
go ahead.
It's really, really heady,
Yeah.
heady stuff. Really like dense, a little philosophical. But what I like is, so when you read something like this guy's like the real deal in that he did it a lot. Like, you know, he was like a practicing artist who was doing it very sincerely. And I think not super philosophically kind of in the moment. So this book was written at the end of his life, and it's kind of a retrospective. He's trying to kind of like explain himself. So it's pretty heady. So a way that's kind of nice to think about it is what it's. Well, actually, wait, to follow up with that thought, I like that because obviously there's lots of, you can have all sorts of like philosophy around art, but I think it can get really like bogged down and academic and stupid. But if you get like somebody who's like was like a practicing artist and he's just trying real hard to explain himself.
Well, it's basically what the Tolstoy thing is he's doing essentially the same thing. It's actually like very closely mirroring where it's like, because Tolstoy also wrote that book near the end of his life too. It's the sort of thing where he's like going back on what he did and his thoughts in general on art. And Tarkovsky even like brings up Tolstoy and quotes him a few times.
And I was telling you, even though he doesn't like explicitly say it, a lot of these things in here, I'm like, oh, I think he must have read that Tolstoy thing. At least I'm getting a lot of this.
He had to have, because some of his ideas are so similar.
And also, you know, he's Russian.
Yeah.
And Tolstoy's like,
he's like the Russian
author. He's like Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Let's see, what was I thinking of? Oh, yeah. No, a while ago, Madeline and I watched a King of the Hill episode.
Mm-hmm.
Where Bobby Hill, who is a funny middle schooler, gets signed up for a college course that's for like clowning. And the teacher is like super pretentious and going into like all this like theory on clowning, and it makes Bobby not funny because he's, you know, you're going into like in-depth clowning theory. And it was a pretty good takedown of academic stuff, but it also like made me on guard because I like to read stuff like this. And so you're like, okay, I read stuff like this, but can't let it like make my art not art, right?
Yeah.
Can't let it like, which is again why I like this, because this guy's pretty legit. Real quick, just as an explanation, kind of just to try, for the sake of our listening audience, as by way of a quick explanation. So most all movies made are done, not the technique is called montage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you put one image next to another image, and the idea is it creates meaning. So the famous Hitchcock example is you show a guy, he's smiling, then you show a happy family, and cut back to him, or you show a guy, show a happy family, cut back to him, he's smiling, and you're like, oh, he's like a wholesome family man. You show him, you cut to a bikini girl, you cut back to him, and you're like, oh, he's a lecherous guy.
Yeah.
So, that's what most all like 99% of movies are, is it's shot, reaction, shot, and that kind of like informs us.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not what he does. He doesn't like that. So when he says he's sculpting in time, he's basically like has a shot of something, and it could be characters acting, or a lot of times he like has shots of like, I don't know, pretty nature things in his movies too, but he kind of just lets it run until he thinks that it's like the appropriate time to cut.
Yeah.
But he'll have his takes are super long because he's not like cutting back and forth between actors.
Yeah. I remember noticing that in Stalker, because I think that might be the only one I've seen. But I remember in that there's like a lot of just long scenes of like, be like a character like going through like the environment.
Yeah.
And it's just that. Or like them like throwing the nuts or whatever, and like them waiting around and like watching. Which also, because he's also very much not like, oh, this needs to be like just like as movies people expect. Because he talks about that, I think it's a little bit outside of the scope, but I think in chapter 1 he talks about some of that, where he talks about him talking to people, or like the letters that he gets from people that watched his movies, and how people are like, I don't know why I loved this so much, because it wasn't like a normal story in a way. Like, it's not like standard narrative, like film stuff. And so people are like, what is this? Also, again, I don't know how making movies in the Soviet Union worked, but it did sound like he didn't get like asked to make movies that often, because he kind of was like very artsy about it. He's like very explicitly like, I'm not just gonna make like a sequential story movie that has like a standard plot thing going on.
Yeah, he had a really tough time making movies, because he made weird movies, and he only made like 7 ever, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's pretty bummed about it. He'd go for like 5 or 6 years between movies. And he was basically, and I don't know the story. Eventually, he had to leave the Soviet Union.
Yeah, I don't know the.
And
details.
he just kind of lived in Western Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And was sad because he missed his home. But yeah, he had a tough time making movies in and out of the Soviet Union, I think.
Probably.
Although, okay, here's an anecdote that I think is, that I can't remember if it's in this book or if I think it's, I watched he gave like a lecture once. It's actually pretty fun to watch. At like a university in like France or something. And so I don't remember, he had a movie out and it was in Cannes.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he was in his hotel room sort of feeling sorry for himself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a knock at the door, and it was Ingmar Bergman and Akira Kurosawa. and none of them spoke the same language, but they essentially came to tell him that they really loved his movie, and they just like hung out all evening. And that's like, you're like, oh dang.
That's awesome. It's like, I don't know what anybody's saying.
Yeah, none of them understood each other, but they were just three amazing directors. And they just like hung out.
However that works.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Again, I don't want to like butcher this anecdote, but I think if I recall, they just got drunk.
Probably.
Yeah.
What else do you do?
Yeah. But yeah, so we could jump into his art stuff. I have to like refamiliarize myself. I was trying real hard to
The stuff he has to say about art is really interesting.
Yeah. It was heavy duty too, like
because I don't
he is
my pictures on my phone that I used kind of as notes. Some of these I don't know which chapter they're in. But one of the things I liked is he has a quote where he talks about how art is just another type of knowing things, or it's another way of assimilating the world, like science.
Yeah.
Where he has a whole thing where he talks about how both science and art are kind of a part of a pursuit towards absolute truth. It's just one is sort of a pursuit of like concrete like facts, and then the other one's like, I don't remember exactly the words he used.
He says it's like every real piece of art like is like a distillation of like the whole universe, and like that.
Oh, yeah. So science is about discovery, and then art is about creation. And they're the two like kind of sides of being in the world, where it's like you discover things, but then also, so that's like one thing. So science is like the pursuit of discovery, and then art is the pursuit of creation. So you're something like that.
Yeah, because he calls science as like an endless. It's like an endless. He calls a ladder, a staircase, or something like up, because you can never like you get a flower and you chop it up, and you can chop up a flower, basically.
Yeah.
Like you can always kind of like dissect the world endlessly.
Yeah.
And you never really like you learn more and more and more, and you never
get closer to knowing everything.
Yeah, and in kind of like a pretty religious way, he's like art on the other hand. Also, he was very very religious.
Yeah, he talks a lot about kind of the religious perspective on a lot of what he has to say.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of analogies like about the creative process and how it's like having faith.
Yeah.
And whatnot. Which is interesting coming from somebody from the Soviet Union.
Yeah. He was very, very religious. But yeah, he talks about how a real piece of art kind of like reveals it's kind of like he says it's like an image of the world, of the whole world in like a drop of water. At some point he says that. I don't think he says that in this chapter. I think he says that later. But in this one he calls it like it's like in a sphere or something. He says it's a weird way of explaining it. But essentially he thinks that art is in like an expression of like truth with a capital T. He's
Well, I have this quote. It's art could be said to be a symbol of the universe, linked with that absolute spiritual truth which is hidden from us in our positive, positivistic, pragmatic activities. So it's just because it's like the act of creating requires you to kind of delve into yourself and your actual like connection with the universe and try reflecting it. So it's a kind of a no, it's interesting, a symbol of the universe. 'Cause
yeah.
it's not it itself, but it's you like embodying it in a way.
Yeah, because he says that. Oh, let's see. Um. Let's see if I can find it. I can't find it immediately. So, but essentially, when he's talking, he's saying that works of art each work of art, is like this unique like expression of the universe, and they might like complement or even contradict each other, but each one is like uh again like capturing this like snapshot of the universe and the reflection of the drop of water kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He also has like a couple really great takedowns of modern art, which I always like.
Well, he's very much. I'd say his like general idea of what is art is almost the same as Tolstoy's, where it's about like a sincere expression. I mean, it's a little bit different because he has kind of that sort of element of the universe contained in like the piece or whatever. Whereas Tolstoy was much more specifically about sort of expressing a feeling.
Yeah.
But it's very much a sort of time transcendence thing. And it has to be a sincere expression.
Yeah, his is a little more heavy duty.
Yeah.
Like he's like real art is well explaining why he lives. Hold on, let me just read the first beginning. Okay. Because just his like little thesis statement. Okay, so he says, it's perfectly clear that the goal for all art, unless it is of course aimed at the consumer like a saleable commodity, is to explain to the artist himself and those around him what man lives for, what is the meaning of his existence. To explain to people the reason for their appearance on the planet, or if not, to explain, at least to pose the question. So, yeah, so he's like, yeah, Tolstoy is like, I'm gonna communicate like this sincere feeling, and Tarkovsky is like, you're getting at like the big question.
Yeah. Well, also, they're also both like big opponents to art for art's sake kind of thing. Because he has a thing where he's like, I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense that an artist would create art for just themselves.
Yeah.
That it like, it inherently like that process, it like requires that other people participate. Like, it kind of isn't art if, say, like, you made something and you're the only one that ever sees it, sort of a thing. It's like part of it is creating for others in a way.
I got it right here.
Quote down somewhere, but he has like a good line about that.
Yeah, I'll just read this whole big old paragraph. Art is born and takes hold wherever there is a timeless and insatiable longing for the spiritual, for the ideal, that longing which draws people to art. Modern art has taken a wrong turn in abandoning the search for the meaning of existence in order to affirm the value of the individual for its own sake.
Yeah.
What purports to be art begins to look like an eccentric occupation for suspect characters who maintain that any personalized action is of intrinsic value simply as a display of self-will. But in artistic creation, the personality does not assert itself. It serves a higher, communal ideal. The artist is always the servant and is perpetually trying to pay for the gift that has been given him as if by a miracle.
Yeah.
And then he has another one.
He said he's there. He has like a big chunk of it is actually talking about that concept.
Yeah, here's the.
But I do really like his idea of the artist as like a servant.
Yeah, here's the next one that's like the same. I simply cannot believe that the artist can ever work for the sake of self-expression. Self-expression is meaningless unless it meets with a response. For the sake of creating a spiritual bond with others, it can only be an agonizing process, one which involves no practical gain. Ultimately, it is an act of sacrifice. But surely it cannot be worth the mere effort for the sake of hearing one's own echo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So was it Tolstoy who was like against the idea of an artist, like art as like an occupation? I think he said something about that.
Yeah.
He's like I don't. Something like that.
I know.
Where
I
it's
vaguely
like,
remember it too.
I don't remember what it was. It's basically his idea is that somebody who wants to produce like a true art is going to do so regardless whether or not they're like professionally an artist or they're just like a farmer or something. Which I get where he's coming from with that. But this is similar in a way, but less focused on kind of the idea of like occupation, but more on like your art doesn't exist for your benefit. Like you creating art is actually for everybody. And as an artist who's kind of blessed with your talent and ability, you're kind of, when you find yourself in that place, you are a servant to utilize that appropriately. Which again, with Tolstoy, it's like his question of like, is art a good thing? Sort of his like initial thesis.
Yeah.
His thing where he's like, I mean, he talks about like kind of on a civilizational level, but this is more like on a personal level where it's like, if you are one to create art, is it a good thing? And if you are to create it, are you creating art that's worth creating? And basically he's saying like, if you're creating it just for yourself and for your own personal expression, you're kind of neglecting your role as a servant. And you're just like hoarding that to yourself. So it's like, is that focus of your art like the actual work that you produced and how that creates like for him like the shared spiritual experience, or is the art something that's used to focus on you? Is it something where it's like, oh, this is something that this person did? Because I can definitely see where he's coming from, because that's still totally like a significant aspect of kind of modern contemporary art.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of a focus on like the artists themselves as kind of a thing.
And it's and that's like a very modern art thing in that it has value because it's like this person's self-expression.
Yeah.
And that, like, even if it sucks, like that's what like gives it. Like, you're not supposed to almost like question that. It's like, well, yeah, that.
Yeah. What does he call it? I think this is. Oh. I don't remember. Crush, dang it. I don't remember. It was in that quote that you just read.
Oh, the one I just read?
Yeah.
It's on 40. Self-expression is meaningless unless it meets with a response. For the sake of creating spiritual bond with others. Or is it the one before, which is the page?
Maybe it was.
Yeah, that's just 38.
Oh, yeah. Any personalized action is of intrinsic value. Or he's like, is it though?
Yeah.
It's an interesting, because I'd say that there's definitely an aspect of that that's been around for a while. And it still is.
Well, and so here's my interesting question, and it's kind of a point a little later on in this chapter. So when I go to the museum and there's the modern art piece, and it's like incomprehensible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's either like a jumble of shapes and lines, or it's like a piece of cheese duct taped to an upside down cross.
Yeah.
Over like a bathtub. And then next to it is the really long artist's like explanation filled, you can tell I don't like this, filled with psychobabble.
Yeah.
Like just like impossible to read. It's like
it's a little essay on the side on
yeah,
a plaque.
It's a little essay, and it like popped out of like the online you can do like postmodern jargon simulators.
Yeah.
And it's like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where oh holy, can I do a good postmodern jargon off the top of my head? I don't know if I can.
Probably.
But, you know, it's like it's like
it's a skill in and of itself.
Yeah, it's like I made this for the purpose of rearticulating the you just have to use like my pre-contextual okay, I'm not gonna I can't do it.
You recognize it when you see
it.
it.
Yeah. It's like a string of words that are like lost in
it's like finding all the biggest words you can.
Yeah.
So it's like not even the plaque is helpful for understanding.
The plaque is like incomprehensible, usually. Some of them are funny and good, but usually they're not modern art either.
Yeah.
They're like a picture of a motorcycle, and the guy's like, my motorcycle exploded in fire and I miss it. But so a little later on, he talks about how we have to be like that. We have a responsibility to take the time to like understand great art, similar to a couple people we've read, Mr. Book of Tea guy.
Mm-hmm.
He, we gotta like. So there's that idea. So I'm always kind of like, or maybe this modern art thing is great, and I'm just not like
Mm-hmm.
giving it like my all. I'm not like prepared to receive it because Tarkovsky's movies are not necessarily like they're long and hard to watch. They're not the worst. They're like I said, I when we watched Stalker, I quite liked it, which was funny because I was like half asleep for half the time, but
It's also
I came away really
pretty
liking it.
strange. I liked it.
Yeah, I really like. Um, I mean, Solaris gives you like a lot to chew on because it's like a sci-fi thing, and you can kind of like get into
Mm-hmm.
it, like the story of it. But anyway, so yeah, I was kind of like maybe I'm not giving these arts enough credit.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I am not worthy, or like I'm not like prepared.
I don't know. It does get complicated because there's definitely like there's no easy way to determine things. Because there can be like abstract art that isn't like an explicit form of something that can evoke feelings. You kind of there's like something about them sometimes, but it's really hard to place a finger on. I mean, this was I've been like thinking about kind of how this is a little bit unrelated, but kind of not. Kind of the different distinctions for like aesthetic things, like the difference between like thinking about what is art and what is like a craft.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of like touching on something that we don't actually comprehend, but we try to like categorize and like codify it. But I don't know if it's like there's like an underlying truth of like how we exist in the world that you like can't actually fully understand. So we're like always like imperfectly trying to just describe it.
Yeah.
And you just can kind of like skirt around like the edges of it, but never actually like go into it. And that's actually just like something that you can, but you can't actually describe it. You can't actually like fully map it out in like outside of what you like actually experience when you see or hear something, when you actually are experiencing the aesthetic, whatever it may be, and you just kind of like it's yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, I know. I think Tarkovsky's thing is almost like the artist, or like I mean, you almost say like a real piece of art, because somewhere he says it shocks you,
mm-hmm.
like it gives, but it's almost like a real piece of art gives you like a little, like a just a little like peek into like I don't know, like Brahman or whatever, like
uh,
like God
yeah,
gives you like a little peek into like the like underlying you know fiber of the universe for just a second, and you're like, whoa.
yeah. And it's one of those things that too, though, like I was saying, is it's not actually like a even like a anywhere close to a perfect description because I know what he's talking about,
Yeah.
but it's like is a shock actually like also it's like probably wrote this in Russian originally, so
Yeah.
there's stuff there, but no, I get what he's saying Because it's not just like, oh, it's shocking. It's
Yeah, it's more like a
there's
jolt.
yeah, but even then, it's like it's not, I don't know if it's even that. There, it's just a. He's describing a certain feeling you get. But yeah, I like your description. It's like you're getting a peek into sort of like the heart of the universe or something.
Yeah.
Like there's something deeper there that is more than just what it is or what it's depicting, but there's like a truth and a connection there.
Yeah, and the artist, I think, kind of like whether they know it or not, kind of like conveying that. And yeah, that's what it like does to a person who's. Because like in the first chapter, when he's talking about like the people who wrote him mean and also nice fan mail,
Mm-hmm.
and how like the one like lady's like, or I don't remember exactly what she said, but she's like, how did you know my life?
Mm-hmm.
And she watched one of the movies.
Yeah.
She's like, how did you?
It's like it's not my life, but
Yeah.
but it is. Yeah. No, it's very interesting. Cause yeah, that first chapter is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's very much him being like, kind of emo about his whole career. But then he's like, I'd be so depressed, and then I'd get like some letter from somebody where it's like they watched my film and it like changed their life.
Yeah, because I
And
think
he's like, this made it all worth it. Just knowing that his work had like this like profound effect on people watching that.
Yeah, because I think he mostly probably got negative criticism.
Yeah. Because it's not, yeah, his work's very, I don't even know, what's the term? Hard to digest, I guess.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
it's pretty inaccessible,
Yeah,
especially because we're used to one kind of like film language.
Yeah.
We're all used to montage, which is fine because montage is a good way of doing things.
It is effective.
But we're all used to montage, and that's not what he's doing. And I think if you kind of like watch his movies and you're expecting that, and you probably don't even think about it, you're just like, what's wrong with this movie?
Yeah.
It's slow and boring.
Mm-hmm. But it's like, that's not what he's...
Yeah.
No, I want to watch Stalker again after reading this.
Yeah.
For sure.
So that's the one I did watch again. And it was I really enjoyable to watch, like with all this present.
Mm-hmm.
Though it didn't like rock my spiritual world. Although it did put me in like a weird kind of like super calm headspace. Like it was like the world slowed down. It might just because the shots are so long and slow. It might not even been anything past that. But like it was like the whole world like slowed down.
Mm-hmm.
For 10 minutes after I watched it. I was just sort of like, whoa. But yeah, I wasn't like, wow.
I mean, to be fair, Stalker's probably, I don't know, less of, I guess, spiritual experience kind of movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty trippy and at times. Yeah, it could be for the right person.
Yeah. Actually, one of my the thing that really one of the things that really gets me, there's one of my favorite shots in film of all time is in Solaris, somewhere in the beginning. It's just like a shot of seaweed. It's just like waving. There's just some of the plants in like a pond and they're waving, and it's like the most beautiful shot. And that's the thing, is Tarkovsky's shots are gorgeous.
Yeah.
They're very like texture.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're super deep. I mean deep as in usually there's a lot in the camera.
Yeah.
Not always, but like a lot of his like famous shots go back pretty far. Mm-hmm. And there's tons of texture everywhere and just tons of stuff. They're super pretty.
Yeah.
But yeah, that shot of just like these plants kind of like waving in the water that's if anything in his movies like does something to me, it's that one. That's really pretty. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something. Well, I have it in my brain. This is sort of I think it's in a later chapter. But it was one of the only things that stuck with me the first time I ever read this. When nothing really stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
But somewhere later on, he's talking about mise en scène. And he's like, this is just a super cool idea. Mm-hmm. So he's like, each of our lives, like at any given moment, is absolutely unique and like nothing that's ever happened before ever. And he's like, so when you're making a scene, you ought to like try and capture that.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I've had enough of tropey scenes with forbidden love where the lovers are separated by like a symbolic pillar or something.
I think he talks about that, I think in chapter 3.
Is that in chapter 3?
I know he mentioned something where it's like essentially does he use the word? I don't know if he used the word tropes.
No,
but
he doesn't.
Like says like conventions or something. But he's like, how many like fences have separated lovers and some other things. He's like, these sorts of things get used all the time, and like these symbols are actually unconducive to the medium of film because film is about capturing those unique moments. And if you're just doing something that's been done already, it's kind of defeating the purpose and like the beautiful thing about what it is. Yeah, I don't remember where, but I'm pretty sure.
That means I must have just read that.
Because I think I read that yesterday or 2 days ago or something.
I wonder if it's when I was half falling asleep in the chair at the gym.
Yeah. I mean, he probably brings it up.
But later, no, that's the exact thing. That's kind of stuck with me in my own little tiny humble way. But I always think about that when like I'm doing shots of my own.
Right.
You're like, is this? Am I just doing the same shot again?
Yeah.
You know, like that.
Is it just because it's something I saw?
Yeah.
Before, just kind of when Tolstoy does is like talking about things being very poetic.
Yeah.
And it's just like the woman that wrote the story that he roasts really bad. Because that's actually exactly the thing. He's like, basically he's saying the story this woman wrote was just a bunch of tropes of things that she liked in other things. Well, and he's like, yeah.
And I remember when we were talking about that with Tolstoy, I thought I'm super vulnerable to this because I love sunsets. And
sunsets have been
sunsets and
yeah,
and people staring longingly into sunset. Like I'm a total sucker for things that like very obviously like, you know, in real life they move me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like beautiful lighting at like the end of the day. But so putting them in when I'm putting them trying to put them in something, it's hard to, you know, like I don't know, make them not just sunsets. But
Yeah.
also another super interesting, maybe not super interesting, but an interesting question is animation. 'Cause you're not capturing, you're like recreating like an imagination of, it's
Yeah.
not, it's suddenly
'Cause
not the same.
It's not the same technically because you're not. You you aren't capturing time in the same way. You are sort of. I don't know. I was thinking about that too a bit, and I actually don't know. Because it's not like animation didn't exist for him. Like, he knew about animation stuff. The Soviet Union was doing animation
And
stuff.
if I recall, somewhere in this book, he talks for a little while about Walt Disney.
I'd be curious what his thoughts on that is. Because
If I
it is
recall,
interesting. It's, yeah, what would that be? Or is it just, I mean, I guess in a way, it's still filmmaking. It's just the elements you're using aren't the same. But there's a lot of it still there.
you're like inventing time. In like his.
Yeah. But in a way, I don't know. If you think about it, it's basically the same. You're just,
Yeah.
instead of recording an actor doing something, you're recording drawings of a character doing something. So in a way, it's like, instead of having an actor do an act in front of a camera, an artist is drawing a series of images of a character acting in front of a camera, basically. So it's like indirect in a way.
Yeah.
But it's like almost like the principles of like art and painting and drawing kind of get blended in there. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, because there's the part where he's like, I don't want film to take anything from the other arts. I want it to be like its own.
Yeah.
Another couple examples he uses to illustrate how he thinks about things that were pretty useful. One is he was saying the ideal is that you just like film somebody's life for like 30 years or whatever, and then you just give it to the director and let him. That was what he said was kind of like the
ideal.
The ideal. Hi, Jason. The other example he used, which was also a nice like way of helping me understand, was it's like a haiku.
Oh yeah, no, that was a good
So
section in there.
You're basically, his idea is essentially you're like haikuing with a camera. You're pointing the camera at the.
Because yeah, in a haiku, it's like you're painting a scene, but often each line is actually kind of, if you think about it, totally disjointed from the other lines. But it creates like a whole feeling by having them as like that unit.
Yeah, and they're not symbolic.
Yeah.
Which is another thing, obviously, he thinks he's not into film being like symbolic.
Yeah. That's like a big thing that would affect watching his movies, probably. Because I know that there's like some, like at the end of Stalker, there's kind of ooh, what does this mean sort of a thing.
Well, and
It's like, what is the meaning of like the wish granting thing at the end?
yeah, and all throughout the characters are like essentially doing nothing more than just like spouting philosophy to each other.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I don't know. It like almost feels at odds with like
Uh-huh.
when you're like, oh, the ideal movie is if you just like have this guy's like candid life and you just like make a movie out of it.
Mhm.
I don't know. I was thinking about that,
It's an
trying to like
interesting.
reconcile Stalker's like heavy duty like uh allegoriness, because you know it's like the one guy is the writer, the other guy is
Mhm.
the scientist, and they're being
Yeah.
taken to like the spiritual place, and like the scientist secretly wants to blow it up.
Uh-huh.
Like it's all very
I mean, so it could be just when he talks about symbols in the book, he's not maybe meaning in like the allegorical sense, but more in like the probably more in like a trope sense, where it's like you're just doing something because oh that's what everybody assumes that to be, or it's like you're doing it because it's like drawing a tree by just doing like a,
yeah.
or just oh I drew all the leaves green because leaves are green on the tree, sort of a thing.
And also, yeah, like there's a lot of that in uh normal like montage film where you know there's a lot of things that are supposed to like tell us kind of like obviously how to feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like you know you trying suddenly I can't even think.
It's
It's like what montage does.
yeah.
Is it?
It's all well, it's all like the premise is like essentially shortcuts.
Yeah.
It's like idea shortcuts. In a way, it seems kind of what he's talking about is not doing that. Like he doesn't take the short route to expressing his ideas in his work and what it is. So it's less about trying to have like densify the film with the very most efficient editing and storytelling, but it's like has to have everything that it needs to in there in kind of its in a way like most raw possible state.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what his idea of the candid lifetime film sort of a thing. Since you can't do that, you kind of have to some extent, modify it. I don't know.
The most accessible and normal one is Ivan's Childhood, his first film. It's really good, and it's also very like much more,
Much more normal.
much more normal. But the mise en scène thing shows up a lot in that there's a lot of really 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 cool shots in that movie, like really cool like set pieces
Uh huh.
where remember reading that and then watching it and being like, yeah, I've like never seen this before. Like there's a scene with a man and a woman like walking through the woods, and he's trying to flirt with her, and it's just like this like really really cool looking aspen forest, I guess. Anyway, it's like I've never like seen that before in like anything. And there's a famous shot where he like scoops her up and kisses her like over like a ravine with like his legs on either side, and he's like holding her, and it's like, again, it's just like an example of it's like I've never seen that before. It's super interesting. Which I don't know. But yeah,
No, I need to watch more of his stuff.
I know. I wish I had more time.
Because, no, just like the ideas behind some of his stuff sounds fascinating. Because it's like, it's not that most directors like don't put thought into their work, but it's like he's like very hardcore about it. And obviously in this book he's kind of sort of solidifying it, kind of looking back at his work, kind of making his ideas concrete and like unified. Obviously there's probably, like with his first film, he probably wasn't thinking about a lot of this. But also I'm sure he like looks back and sees like a kind of through line of like how he has approached it and like what's going on there.
Yeah, and he talks somewhere, I vaguely remember, he tries to like put the film together very like intuitively. I don't think he was like, at least the cuts, like when he's talking about like when to like let the scene play. He like tries to cut like when the scene. That's one of the harder things to. He calls it time pressure, but it's like, I guess, the best I can understand is he cuts it when he feels like it's kind of like built up to the point where you're like, now we have to cut. Like it's, I don't know.
It's just the vibes.
Yeah, he's just like, but that's like how I put him together. Is he just like felt it out?
Yeah.
There's a shot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just remember seeing that and being like, oh yeah, that's cool looking. All of his movies are super cool looking and have lots and lots of examples of that, like mise en scène, whatever.
He also talks about that a lot. The mise en scène thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what else?
I know.
He says a lot in just 2 chapters.
I know. I remember
but
thinking
like the general ideas we kind of, because there's so much about.
So he also, I guess, one thing that was interesting to me, compounded with the idea of like how does animation fit into this.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously the stuff I am very slowly making is essentially like a music video. Like it's stuff that's conjured up for me by a song, and wants he really wants film to be like doing its film thing and not like, he has music in his movies and it's pretty great usually. Like it's really effective.
Mm-hmm.
But he like doesn't want film to like serve any other art form, or like he says he doesn't want it to be like painterly or be like filled with literary ideas.
Well, also he talks about like if you were to create a scene to be like a painting that exists. He's like, what's the point of that? It's like you're not watching the like a movie for that purpose. I can't remember what he said, but he mentioned something of that where it's like, why would you create a scene that like looks like a painting?
Oh,
He says
take
it kind of
that,
near the end
Stanley
of
Kubrick. Actually, Solaris was a response to 2001, and when you at first you're like, oh man, Solaris isn't anywhere near as good as 2001, but actually the more I thought about it over the years, the random thing that occasionally I think about, I think it actually might be better than 2001. There's like a part of me that can't even like. That's like a hard time saying that. Sounds pretentious, but so when you see Solaris, so you know in 2001 there's the flying through space and time dimensions.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. What Tarkovsky does is he just has this like long shot of a car driving down like a busy freeway.
Uh-huh.
And it's like the same thing.
Huh.
And at first you're like, what? But then spoilers. Later in the film you realize that one of the characters in the car is like an alien who's experiencing this for the first time.
Oh.
And so it'd be like what would that be like?
Uh-huh.
And it's like you're like driving through this like wild, I don't know, it's super cool when you think of it as like an answer to Stanley Kubrick's thing, because it's not anywhere near as glamorous.
Yeah.
It's like you stuck a camera on the front of a car and like drove it through Moscow or something.
Yeah.
Although it's again, it's done very artfully. Like when you watch it, it's something about it is, it's got something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it. I mean, years ago, I was like, okay, well, this is like the cheap version. You're like, we don't have any special effects, so let's just like drive around a car.
Yeah.
But now I'm sort of like, oh, actually, that's really cool.
Huh.
So anyway, whenever you see Solaris,
whenever I want to watch it. Oh my gosh. So
okay, hope you enjoyed Tears of the Kingdom and Skate 3: The Return of Jafar.
Skate 3, the get run over by cars and people throwing skateboards at you.
Listening to us talk about artsy fartsy directors.
Yeah.
So artsy.
Also, I like that pretty much everybody that we've read has said that like critics are dumb.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Uh, which part of that it's like probably comes from sort of a being annoyed that they had their work critiqued in a
yeah.
way, but also that they all bring up really good points about it. But
Critics a weird job.
I don't
It's
I
weird.
actually don't understand.
It's weird that they
Cause,
exist.
cause like I personally have like never cared about what any like professional critic has to say about anything, and I'm always like, why would I care what this guy has to say
Yeah,
about
it's
this? It's like, I can judge for myself, I guess. Like what I don't know, especially with like I can kind of see with something like a game or a movie where you're like, oh, does it sound like it's something I would enjoy? Because it's going to be a big time investment. But for example, like an art critic where they're like critiquing like a painting, that makes no sense to me.
yeah.
Um, but there's a quote here that I took a picture of that I really liked. That's kind of talking about that, but it's more like people calling stuff boring. He says, "The beautiful is hidden from the eyes of those who are not searching for the truth, for whom it is contraindicated. But the profound lack of spirituality of those who see art and condemn it, for the fact that they are neither willing nor ready to consider the meaning and aim of their existence in any higher sense, it is often masked by the vulgarly simplistic cry, 'I don't like it. It's boring.' It is not a point that one can argue, but it is like the utterance of a man born blind who is being told about a rainbow." I just like, I had to take a picture of that because it's like, that's such a good, like, roast of people, like, especially, yeah, having seen Stalker, because I really liked it. And I could definitely see people being like, I don't get this. This is really boring.
Yeah.
And yeah, that they they have, what is it? They don't see any like, yeah, no meaning or aim of their existence. Neither willing nor ready to consider a meaning. Ugh, what a roast. Just be like, you're not even considering whether or not your life has any meaning. That's why you think it's boring.
Like if you don't animate good and Miyazaki sees it and he's like, what's the purpose of your life?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Jason has read the book Solaris.
I have not.
Yeah, I told you to watch the movie a couple years ago. But yeah, be warned. It's different. It's slow.
As are
Translating, yeah, luckily this guy translating into film, it's a weird, he's already got his own like weird thing going on, so it kind of it probably fits okay.
well, also his mentality about filmmaking is very much against the idea of like trying to like really adapt something like a play or a book. And it's like, if you are, it's like the director should just basically do as they will with it to make it into an actual like piece of cinema,
Yeah.
rather than like try to be slave to the source material, basically, if it's to actually be like a worthwhile piece of film. which is probably why it's different from the book. Because he's like, I'm not going to try and make it the book. It's going to be the film Solaris, not the book Solaris. Mm. So, you know, because he talks a good amount about that. Because he doesn't see film as just like a collection of different art forms coming together to do something. It's like its own whole unit of art. It's like if it has a film score, it's not just, oh, that's music, and then also acting, and also painting, and also whatever else. It's all like the director combines it all, and everything's considered with the purpose of creating the film. And those are all just kind of tools and mediums used to craft the whole thing. It's too bendy. The book is too bendy.
Philip's over there doing some drugs.
Doing some
nays and necks.
Some oxymetazoline HCl mind bendy.
Yeah, I wish I had more time.
Just watch the movie while you sleep.
Well, I've watched...
You know, beam it into your brain.
I can watch some of it, like, while I have, like, work time, but, like, you know, I can...
But you have to, like, watch it, though.
Yeah, well, that's
the thing.
I mean, like, I stopped working and I watched Stalker. But I mean, like, I wish we could watch it with, like, friends in a place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, watch it, like... It kind of does. I mean, he kind of captures the massive moving pattern, the shifting stuff. It's just... The special effects aren't stellar in Solaris, but that's kind of not the point.
Yeah.
I bet in his heart of heart he would have loved to have better special effects, but
yeah,
again, he's for his
time.
Going through the universe scene, he's driving like through Moscow.
Yeah.
Although again, conceptually, the more I think about it, the more I like that. It's like you're like, sure, you're used to this, but like it's kind of like what a weird thing to like drive through this area, or you know, like to drive down like a highway if you were to like somehow step outside and see it fresh.
Yeah.
B movie.
Next.
I saw every so often Madeline and I do get to go on a date with my aunt babysitting, and we go to her classroom where she has a gigantic screen.
Mm-hmm.
And because now elementary school classrooms are fancy. And we watched a movie that we would not get to watch otherwise.
Yeah.
So we watched Godzilla -1. It's pretty good.
It's not B movie though.
No.
It's no B movie.
It's a good remake of B movie.
It's just Godzilla instead of the bee.
Yeah. And Godzilla's like, I'm Seinfeld.
Godzilla voiced by Seinfeld.
I heard he turned it down. I couldn't understand the commentary because I don't speak Japanese. Do. That's a joke. It was like the same. It was like the same message as Shin Godzilla. I guess every single Godzilla movie made in Japan is like, stupid government, this group of heroic private citizens will do it.
Uh-huh.
It was like the exact same. But yeah, I really liked -1. It was a really cool Godzilla movie.
Took out her eyes and used them.
Yeah, how often
You swap eyes every
if you
once
live
in a
in Japan, how often are you attacked by kaiju? Is it pretty often? Is it pretty frequent to be attacked?
mugged by a kaiju
Is it-
on your way home from work.
Is it pretty frequent to get attacked by kaiju?
Ask Yukari.
Yeah, you're just walking home and you're like, oh, there's Golgora or whatever. Gosh dang it.
Gamora shows up or whatever.
Yeah.
Or Mecha Godzilla. Or I don't remember any of their names.
All the time. Yeah.
It's non-stop.
You just have to go about your daily life.
Just Mothra shows up.
Yeah, you're like,
to annoy you.
yeah, you're just in the backyard relaxing, reading a book, and like Ultraman like falls on your neighbor's house. Every single day. Yeah, Ultraman falls on your neighbor's house and you're just like, get out your earplugs. If you have a super innocent heart. That's how you see. No, that's how you see Totoro's. Just kidding. I don't think anyone gets to see Totoro's unless they are very young.
Totoro's kind of a kaiju. Kinda.
He's kind of small,
Well, there's a really big one.
but not compared to a kaiju.
You'd be
The
a
one-
little kaiju.
The Princess Mononoke thing was kind of kaiju.
Yeah. The forest spirit.
Yeah.
Cat Bus. Is Cat Bus a kaiju?
Cat Bus is a very powerful kaiju. Like on lists of kaijus, Cat Bus is usually pretty high up. He's a nice kaiju. Sometimes Godzilla's a nice kaiju. I like when he's not. I like the Godzilla movies where he's just a monster. And not like... Although it's been a long time since I've seen any of like the funny 70s ones, but when I was a little kid they would play on the TV and I would just watch them. So I've actually seen a fair amount of those, weirdly enough. Oh yeah. Yeah. Totoro's the little Kodama at the end or whatever. Is that the right word? The little guys and the little force spirits.
Yeah. Baby Godzilla.
Yeah. I remember at least like I've seen those old baby Godzilla.
It's like baby Muppet babies.
No, it's just a stupid cute Godzilla.
What about wife of Godzilla? Bride of Godzilla? Is there a bride of Godzilla?
I have some soundtracks from old Godzilla movies because they're so fun. Who's this? Oh, Angurius, who I'm not familiar with. But I remember when I first found it on YouTube, and all the comments were like, "Why would Godzilla fight his little buddy Angurius?" So I had to look it up, and I guess Angurius is his like little sidekick. He's like an ankylosaurus. But I thought that was funny. They're like, "Why would he fight Angurius?" Anyway.
What else?
I don't know. We can make it short. It's
Yeah.
been 2 hours. So
It's
it's just about perfect, probably.
Probably.
I mean, there's all sorts of stuff in there, but I feel like we got to most of the stuff.
We got like the big points, I think.
Links don't work? Oh,
Yeah,
links.
I don't think you can put links in the YouTube chat.
Well, you can listen to Godzilla vs. Angurius if you want a fun song. It's like a very... From like a very shenanigans Godzilla movie, I'm sure.
But yeah, it's kind of the big point.
Yeah.
I mean, really, both chapters were really interesting. I thought just his thoughts on art were really, really interesting.
Yeah, he's like... Yeah, it's like a riff on Tolstoy.
Yeah.
It's like Tolstoy.
It's like updated.
Yeah.
Since he's like doing his stuff like... I mean, not quite 100 years later, but...
And again, I mean, we already said this, but like Tolstoy's is a little more like, oh, are you communicating like this specific feeling or whatever successfully?
Are you infecting
whereas
that feeling in...
Whereas Tarkovsky's like, are you making them experience God? Like,
yeah.
It's like a little more heavy duty.
Well, I mean, they're both like pretty religious.
Yeah.
So. But definitely, I felt like Tarkovsky's stuff is... He talks a lot more specifically religiously, I felt like.
Yeah. He was. I was...
Which I wonder if part of that is, too, that he was in the Soviet Union, and when he's, at the time of writing this, when he wasn't anymore, he probably was, like, felt much, like, a need to, like, express that a lot more, since it probably was not, like, something that he kind of had an outlet for a long time.
Yeah.
Whereas Tolstoy didn't have that. It's like everybody was Orthodox, and he was Orthodox or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm assuming. But so that's a big difference, I guess.
Oh, here's the thing. Not only were Tarkovsky's films just drop dead gorgeous, but he has a whole bunch of Polaroids, and they're like the greatest looking Polaroids in all time. They're like Polaroids of, a street and it's misty and there's lights stabbing through the trees. Anyway, look up Tarkovsky's Polaroids. You're like, dang, you're just good with a camera.
I mean,
They're
that's like
They're
his
so good.
whole thing.
Yeah. Because speaking of like mediums, Polaroids are hard to work with. But yeah, Tarkovsky's Polaroids are. So that's a.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
No, I have to look at them.
Yeah, they're really nice.
Yeah, I have one Polaroid that I took of like the mountain. It looks super pretty, and I'm like, Tarkovsky, did I do it?
Yeah, they're very. Yeah.
Yeah, they're super pretty. Again, when you can just like capture that something.
Yeah.
Like that, just a little something. You're like, it's got it.
Yeah.
Like that's like a little haiku in a picture.
Definitely. Yeah.
Stupid Tarkovsky. Yeah.
Error occurred.
Oh no.
Oh, let me.
Okay. Well.
Let me make sure. It appears to be working. Okay. Anyway. I think that's probably good.
Yeah, I think so.
Especially since there might be technical difficulties at this point. I don't know.
And also because we should go to bed.
Yeah. I've got...
Not stay up.
I don't want to be, like, tired for farmer's market. Because being tired and also, like, hot is not a good time. All right.
All right.
Well,
Bye, Jason,
bye, Jason.
if you're still there.
Who knows?
Jason.
But good night.
Good night
To everybody.